Welcome back to the podcast on the state of affairs with Maharaj. Uh, it's a second conversation in line with the New Year. For the one I have conducted last week, I put it up on the YouTube, and now I have a very important podcast to start with somebody I don't know in person, but then the work speaks for her. She is Sahana Ahmed, who is a poet, a novelist, and a publisher also. Has done some commendable job when it comes to literature. She is the author of Combat Skirts, published in 2018, and the editor of MET, Peace Poems 2022. Apart from that, she is also somebody who has for her work. Uh, she is being awarded Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce by the Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry for the outstanding and stellar work that she is doing. I got to her profile just weeks before, and unconventionally, because the podcast normally suits the people from the international relations and political science at large, but as an individual, as somebody who has quite fascination and is passionate about learning a lot about literature, about different streams, I thought that I must invite somebody who can speak from a position of strength when it comes to literature, and none other than Sahana Ahmed. I am too much happy that I got her here on this podcast. So here is welcoming her on this important podcast on the state of affairs.
Thank you so much, Mehraj, for inviting me, and very happy New Year to everybody who's watching.
And happy New Year to you as well. Thank you so much. I have got an academy to teach. I have got a good team of young people who want to make a difference. But deep down, as a student of political science, what I miss the most is that I couldn't do justice by putting myself as a student of English literature, as has happened to many other people out there who are doing different work, who are into different departments of the government or the private sphere, but a part of them as students, as learners, or as the people who love literature still remains there. They do talk whenever they get a chance. They do read a lot whenever they get a chance. And then this is a similar thing that has happened to me as an individual. Before we can talk about that, first of all, I would like you to delve and shed some light on your work. Over to you, sir. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mehraj. So I came to writing quite late in life. I am not a student of literature or language. So I started writing when I was 36. So it's never too late. And I actually remember the date when I sent out my first submission. It was August 15th, 2016, when I had a few stories in my folder in my laptop, and I thought that I have always been very passionate about words more than anything. So I thought that it was time for me to actually take up writing as a serious occupation. So I was always very fond of reading and writing, but I came to writing after having gone through, I think, 5 or 6 industries and many sectors. So by the age of 36, finally, because of many other factors, but one of the biggest reasons for me to take up writing was I was not well. So I thought I cannot leave this world without, you know, finally, you know, probably without delving into the one big passion of my life, which was stories. So I finally decided to take up writing in 2016. In September, I sent out a short story to a publisher. Uh, it was the first short story I had ever sent out, and it was for a contest. And that got me the contract to write my first novel, which is Combat Skirts, as you have mentioned. And it rarely happens that somebody with absolutely no connections in the publishing industry gets a chance like that. So my publisher, Juggernaut, they used to make me say this in all my media interactions that you don't need to know anyone to get published. So I was probably one of those first people who had no body of work, but I was given the chance to write a book for them.
That's quite wonderful because I also heard about your work titled as the military romance. Kindly do tell us about that.
So, Mehraj, when I started writing, when I mentioned that I sent out my first submission, it was to a journal which is run by the MFA students of the University of Chester. It's the Journal of the International Flash Fiction Association. And these journals have a very, very low acceptance rate, less than 1%. So I just took a chance and I sent them my work and it was accepted. And it told me that maybe I have some talent, that all those, little snippets of writing that I had in my laptop folders, they actually meant something. So I started with literary fiction. Now, this is something, as a writer, it pains me when people categorize writing into commercial writing, into, literary fiction, etc. But anyway, I wanted to be a serious writer. But when I sent out my first short story, it was called Zeenat Aman is Not a Soldier. And the theme of the contest was first love. So many very well known writers participated, and I was in the top 10. And I was the only one who was actually given the chance to write a book by the publisher. So, Zina Taman is Not a Soldier was set on a military special train. So it was something that I was familiar with, being an army child. So the editors and the management at Juggernaut, they felt that it was a very fresh idea. And the one condition they had for me was they wanted me to write a romance based in the army. And I was stuck for a long time because that was not my on my agenda. I did not want to be known as a romance writer because unfortunately, even though romance is a genre which is very hard to write, very few people are able to write a love story in a way that attracts readers. But it's not given the kind of respect that should be given to literature of that kind. I mean, uh, one of the most enduring writers we have is Jane Austen. Her stories endure, and there are so many. I mean, her stories never, they're always some adaptation or the other of her stories is up. So, anyway, I thought that I would be labeled as a romance writer, so I was not very keen on that. But then, uh, somebody like me who had no connections in the publishing industry was being given a chance to write a whole book, and I could not say no to that. So I trained myself, mentally also conditioned myself to write a love story. And whoever has read Combat Skirts has told me that it's a very unconventional love story. It's not really about a girl and a boy. It, you know, uh, touches upon many themes like mental health, about, second chances in life, uh, failure is not the end, many other things. Mostly it is about a bunch of girls living in an army hostel and how they find their own paths and find the agency to make their own choices in life. So it's not a
That's
very
that's
typical
that's quite
story.
fascinating. No, I mean the a person from a non publishing background gets into the publishing, and then the work that you have put in order to actually create a different kind of a niche for herself. Getting back to to my original question is, as a person at this interesting crossroad of the history and time, to my understanding as a student, why isn't literature the first priority for the students, especially in the areas like ours? Like I hail from Jammu and Kashmir. There are some outstanding people, outstanding students, great researchers that we have produced, but still, the basic narrative that we miss is that English literature isn't part of the larger career choices for students. As an observer or as somebody who is based in Delhi and might have interactions with the students and observing the social transformation and socialization closely, where do you see this thing is going? And tell us more about it, if there is any more thing to this process.
Yes, Mehraj, actually, let's take a macroscopic view of this. So, India is the sixth largest market for books in the world. Uh, for English language books, it is the third largest after the US and the UK. However, the market is mostly dominated by academic books and textbooks. So, reading for pleasure is not something that is taken very seriously in our country. Uh, One of the biggest reasons is that the publishing industry, is not very organized as such. So it is not a very viable career option for somebody who needs to support their family. So I always say this, and it is not fair also, but the practical reality is that if you want to be a creative writer in India, you have to be privileged. You have to be able to, um, you know, or maybe you don't, you need to be in a position where you don't need to worry about paying your bills. So one of my mentors, Sri Lankan author Romesh Gunsekara, he's somebody who's very well known and was nominated for the Booker for his debut novel. So he said that, to be able to write fiction or poetry, one needs to have a spouse who's earning really well. So, thankfully, I have that. And also, I came to writing very late in life because finally I could afford it. There are many people who ask me in their early 20s, they say, ma'am, I want to be a writer full time, and I have this option to join so and so company, but I want to write full time. And I always tell them that, see, having a passion is very good, but you don't have to be a suffering artist to do that. You have to be smarter about it. So, in some ways, I am trying to bring about awareness about this. And one of the primary reasons I started my publishing house was also that a lot of people do not even understand how the industry is structured. So there are traditional publishers who pay you for your work, but most people are under the impression that one has to pay to get their book published. So they see so many ads, especially on Instagram nowadays, you know, pays this amount of money and you can be a published author in 90 days. So all those things have created an impression that, vanity is the only way to go about getting published. So I'm trying to create some awareness regarding this. And if we start now, my daughter, she's 12 years old, she wants to be a writer. So I want to be able to contribute to the industry in a way where, structures are better. I said India is a huge market for books, but our distribution and our retail, uh, these sectors are lacking in a big way. And this is something that everybody in the industry in India, they all agree with this. But it's, we can complain about this, but what can we do to contribute and make a change? You said, I live in Delhi now, but I grew up in small towns because my father was in the army, in the infantry. He was mostly posted in places where there was no electricity, there were no roads. So I know the reality of small town India, especially in the remote areas in the hills. I want to be able to earn enough from my books to be able to start libraries and bookstores across India. That is one of the biggest, aims I have for the next 10 years, a personal goal for myself. So if people see that there is a role model, or if there is, somebody who's able to make, create livelihoods out of writing books, uh, that is the only way to actually create a change. Otherwise, we are still stuck in that conditioning where we think that being a lawyer or being a government employee or being a doctor and engineer, these are the only proper career options that we have for our kids. And obviously, I don't blame anybody, because obviously all parents would like their children to be settled, as we say in India.
And again, this thing is the question still arises: is the lack of economic and financial incentive in the writing at a very infant, I mean, at the age of infancy, uh, does bar many of the writers, and they do switch over different careers. But my limited question still remains: is the amount of technology. Some of the people would argue that it's an age of information where people would love to scroll down the reels because it's so attractive, because it has an algorithm to follow. And if that's the other side of the technology and the technological onslaught. But the other side of it is that there are some platforms where people can write, they can freely express their waves, they can write stories. Although it has enabled that atmosphere, I mean, when it comes to technology, there still remains a gap, that why don't students, despite having less economic incentives, having less career stability, kind of an issue when it comes to writing and getting published and being a writer, being a poet, are we seriously living in an era where writing is tough, content has become commercialized the way, and even some would argue that in the parlance of international relations, they say that you have to be a strategic thinker and you have to produce a content, you have to bring new things to the table. What about the literature that has been witness to many of the civilizations, that has been witness to many of the ups and downs of humanity, that has served humanity through and through? Why not literature? Are there the right amount of knowledge that you have about this issue of people not choosing literature, does include the fact that people don't consider it as wise decision to be a writer because they suffer a lot? You don't want to be a writer by making your family and yourself suffer a lot. We are living in the testing times, don't we?
Yes, we are. So I can answer this question in a twofold way. So the pros of technology is that, we have access to a lot of information. We are exposed to all sorts of, for example, even 20 years ago, if you wanted to be published in a journal or a magazine, you had to post your story to them. Now you can just go on a site like uh, Duotrope or Chill Subs or Submittable, and just create an account and post your content. Or in India, we have a great example of Pratilipi, which is not just providing a platform to writers writing in English or Hindi, but also in many regional languages, and they've done really well. Another example is the Juggernaut writing platform. So you must have heard of Airtel Books. So a few years ago, there was a huge investment of about 15 crores that was made into this app, where people could come and publish their work, and it was readily available to all Airtel subscribers or to whoever created an account on that platform. But it did not really succeed. So we have Pratilipi on one hand, we have the Juggernaut writing platform on the other hand. The thing is, during the pandemic, there were more writers than readers. Now, one thing is that due to the lack of a filter, the process of the editorial process was lacking, and anybody who wrote anything could get published. And this created a sort of instant gratification, a culture of instant gratification, which also harmed the whole, I would say, ecosystem. So the second part of my answer would be the cons of technology when it comes to publishing. So uh, one example is Instagram poetry. Anybody can just write 4 lines, put it in a canvas square, and post it online, and their friends and their family would, they'll obviously like it and they'll leave great compliments. So what happens is that many people have stopped, pushing themselves harder. Uh, they've stopped learning, and they're just addicted to this whole process of getting compliments on social media, which is why they don't want to actually explore the traditional form of getting published. So this is something that I have spoken about a lot, the whole culture of instant gratification. So obviously technology can help you by giving you like any resources. There are great resources online for aspiring writers like Lit Reactor, which had just actually shut down, unfortunately. They had great resources. You can go online and read the works of, great writers internationally, from African countries, from the Caribbean countries. I think great work is coming out from those regions. So even though we have access to great literature, but I think everybody's just trying to get success too fast, and that is what is harming the whole culture of you know uh, going through the whole process of publishing.
That having been said, I mean, the complete complementary question will be, what about the artificial intelligence? Is it a challenge?
So I had actually written an opinion piece in the Times of India last year when ChatGPT had just come, into popular consciousness. And see, Mehraj, people can write, people can get ideas through AI. A lot of people are actually doing it. Many publications, in fact, called for submissions where they wanted you to write along with AI and come up with stories and poetry. Um, but uh, I have experimented a lot with AI. My conclusion personally is that, you know, uh, the creativity that a human being brings, the originality of thought, or the layers of, the subtext, that is something that AI
And also
cannot.
one complementary thing will be, is that if AI cannot replace the human element of human element of the world and its civilization or the history or the times we live in, so has if humans can create a technology like AI in order to reproduce things at a very faster and stellar pace, they still have a tendency to commit mistakes, commit errors, and the entire argument of serving the humanity, getting people know the stories, getting people read the stories, write the stories, and write about the betterment of the world, and also enriching the culture of literature, culture of different domains of life. That's a complementary thing to whatever you said. Another thing is that at global level, if you must have gone through the a lot of books and by choosing your genre for writing. My point is that in the current landscape of the world, which country still holds the substance of producing the wonderful literature?
So that's a very difficult question. We can't really zone in on one country or. So the US remains the biggest market for books written in English. And I would say the US and the UK are still, like forerunners when it comes to publishing. And that India, where English is not even our first language of communication, we are third in the whole world when it comes to producing books in English. That's a huge deal. Otherwise, when it comes to the volume of books, then China, Germany, and Japan are ahead of us. So I think that tells us that we need to work more on our regional languages. So I think the whole variety of literature, the richness of the variety of literature in India is, I think, something that no other country can surpass.
And if we talk about writers in India, I mean, who do come to your mind when it comes to writers in India? Just quickly before we can sign off with the last question.
Okay, so you're asking me
Yeah,
who are
when
the
when
writers
it comes to
I
India and the writing and literature in the current times, who do you think that are some of the people we have to look up to for reading and writing?
That's a very difficult question, Mehraj. I have stayed away from reviewing the works of contemporary people, and I do consider people like Amit Chaudhary and Amitabh Ghosh also contemporaries because although they are very senior to me and my body of work is nowhere close to them, but 50 years or 100 years down the line, nobody's going to make that distinction. They're going to take me in the same bracket as them. So I have already named the people I
Okay,
admire. So
and and
Amit
and,
Chaudhary,
and the
Amitabh
questions
Ghosh.
that students do face, and normal people who have certain tendency of reading and writing. The habit is quite tough. Not all the people do read a lot. Not all the people do have to take it on and write. But still, for the beginners, as naive as me, who want to get into the world of literature by reading people, what are your suggestions when it comes to the book list that we have to begin with? When it comes to English literature, I mean.
So I have given you two names.
Hmm.
I think Amitabh Ghosh is brilliant. I don't know why more people do not talk about his fiction, like Calcutta Chromosomes. I think is one book that should be adapted and made into a web series by Netflix or somebody because I
Hmm.
am just in awe of his writing skills. Um, okay, if I have to name people, I would say Sumana Roy is somebody who's somebody I really admire from people who are writing today. Um, okay, if I can name people who are not around anymore, then R.K. Lakshman, of course. Um, Banto is somebody I would recommend.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, it's such a long list of people. Satyajit Ray, please read Satyajit Ray. Not many people are aware of his writing skills. People mostly think of him as a filmmaker, but he's
Yeah.
somebody I have enjoyed reading so much.
For the last comments, I would love to extend an invitation on the behalf of the academy that I run and also on the behalf of the State of Affairs podcast to please accept it and do visit our academy. Number one. Number two, also partner with us in terms of awareness for the young students, young scholars, and authors who want to get into the literature. We would love to have you someday at our office and in our complex, so that we also will be inspired by your presence, and you will shower us with your ideas about how for the beginners to learn a lot from that discussion and from that interaction. Thank you so much. You joined me on a very short notes. Again, I'll say it. It has been a wonderful conversation. It was unconventional purely, and the people who will be watching this podcast, I hope they'll love it and they will also drop their feedback on the podcast once it's put up on the YouTube. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Mehraj, for the invitation, and I would love to meet your students and visit your academy. And it was a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. Have a splendid day ahead.
You too.